I'm in big trouble again. I took my husband's Maybach without permission and crashed it into a Porsche. Now I've got him cleaning up my mess and I'm standing in the corner like a kid in trouble. He took off his glasses and rubbed his brow. Even if you're a child, mistakes still need to be punished. My heart skipped a beat. Every time he takes off his glasses, I know what's coming. A kiss. But when he started taking off his watch, that's when I knew I was in real trouble. Is it too late to run away now? When you need something, go to your husband. That's the spice of life. My husband, Ethan Gray, is a world-renowned golden lawyer with a perfect track record. He's never lost a case. Every time he's a guest on a legal talk show, he gains a whole new batch of female fans. Let's face it, Ethan Gray is one of the hottest lawyers out there. Sharp jawline, thick brows, piercing eyes, handsome and totally unaware of how much he drives women crazy. And yet, this guy, he has no clue how to handle me. I had just gotten my driver's license and decided to take his Maybach for a spin to grab some groceries. Turns out, I'm not great behind the wheel and ended up crashing into a Porsche that changed lanes too suddenly. The Porsche driver got out, swearing, and looked at the crumpled rear of the car. He pointed at me. Do you even know how to drive? Get out, get out. Let's talk about how you're going to pay for this. Hear me? Get out. Great. He looked pretty pissed. My hands were shaking as I dialed Ethan Gray. What's wrong? His voice, deep and magnetic, always calmed me down. But I couldn't keep the crack out of my voice. Hey, honey, I crashed the car. There was a 2-second pause and then he spoke. Sorry everyone. Something came up at home. The meeting's postponed. From the sound of his voice, I could practically picture him throwing on his suit jacket as he walked out the door. Still, he didn't forget to reassure me. Get out of the car and wait somewhere safe. I'll be right there. I stood there helpless by the greenbelt while the Porsche owner kept yelling at me. I could see him from a distance stepping out of his car, wearing a perfectly tailored dark gray suit. He must have just come from the law firm. He walked quickly over to me, threw his jacket around me, and I almost wanted to hug him right there. Ethan Gray frowned, straightened me up and said, "Stand properly. We'll talk about this later." The Porsche guy, who had been ranting and cursing, suddenly turned all sweet when he saw Ethan. "Oh, it's Mrs. Gray. I thought this car looked familiar." No problem, no problem. I'll just deal with the insurance myself." Things were going way better than I'd imagined. I guess there's nothing Ethan Gray can't fix. Once he took care of my mess, he shoved me into the car and drove us home in silence. The air in the car was tense and I wisely kept my mouth shut. Once we got inside, I quietly followed him, knowing exactly what would happen next. I stood in the corner, facing the wall for my time out. In the past, when I messed up, I'd always get sent to the wall, but I'd turn the tables by accusing him of domestic violence, and he'd end up apologizing. But this time he was really pissed. Arms crossed, looking down at me with that serious expression. "How many times have I told you not to drive on your own? Why didn't you listen? I just wanted to go to the seafood market to get some fresh stuff. Didn't you say you wanted to eat steamed seafood?" My voice trailed off, getting softer. He didn't say anything and I couldn't help it. I threw myself into his arms, sobbing, "I'm sorry. I messed up, do whatever you want with me." Instead of scolding me, he gently brushed a lock of hair from my face. "Let the maid cook. You just need to be happy." "I'm happy cooking for you," I said, my cheeks burning with embarrassment. So embarrassing. Even after all these years, every time I say something sweet to him, I can't help but blush. He finally smiled, just a small, faint smile. But it was enough to let me know I was off the hook. I wrapped my arms around his neck, nuzzling him like a kitten. If he were a cat, he'd definitely be a Maine Coon. Looks intimidating but so soft and gentle. But of course, I was too quick to celebrate. Even kids have to be punished when they mess up. He slowly removed his glasses and his lips were dangerously close to mine, eyes dark with intent. My heart was pounding. Every time he took off his glasses, I knew he was about to kiss me. When he started taking off his watch, that familiar sensation hit and my legs went weak. I knew I was done for. If I don't run now, when will I? Nina. Ethan called my name from behind, sounding so resigned as I locked myself in the study. I still have some work to finish. From outside the door, his voice was calm, coaxing me. "Be good, we'll do it tomorrow." "No." I called back. In that moment, I felt like Little Red Riding Hood, knowing the big bad wolf was closing in on me. I pretended to cry weakly, rubbing the blanket, totally ignoring Ethan Gray no matter how much he coaxed from behind. I won't admit it, but I was totally tricked into opening the door by a midnight snack. "Mr. Gray, you're bullying me because you're strong. I'm going to sue you." Ethan Gray chuckled and wrapped his arms around me from behind. "Okay, I'll send you a template for the lawsuit." I knew it. I'll never win an argument with him. He always had that indifferent, aloof look on his face. The more I got mad, the more relaxed he seemed, looking at me with a mixture of affection and something that just made me more annoyed. Buy me a bag. I wanted him to at least give a little. Maybe that would make me feel more balanced. Plus, after all the hassle last night, I deserved some compensation, right? Still talking about buying bags? I'm deducting the cost of car repairs from your allowance. My tears hadn't even dried yet, and I quickly spun around to face him, asking, why? I've already admitted my mistake. Yes, you admit your mistake every time, but will you ever learn? But you already punished me. The punishment wasn't enough for you to learn your lesson. From now on, I'll only transfer you $200 a day. If you behave, maybe I'll take you shopping for clothes and bags. $200 a day should be enough. How could such a sexy mouth say such cold things? $200 a day? That's not nearly enough. A meal out with my friends eats that up. Ethan Gray ignored my protests, propping his head up with one hand and closing his eyes to relax. I hurriedly wrapped my arms around his big leg. Honey, don't do this to me. How about you just give me $5,000 a month so I can be a little more comfortable? Please. Ethan Gray opened his eyes in shock and his mouth twitched, trying not to laugh. You sure? Yes. I'll take that as a yes. Don't forget to send the money. I'm so smart. Sometimes you have to fight for your own interest. Ethan Gray couldn't help but laugh as he pulled me into his arms, letting out a long sigh. I really can't trust you to go out alone. You can't even keep track of your own expenses. You'll probably get sold to human traffickers and help them count the money. Joking, right? No way. I didn't expect my mother-in-law to come over early in the morning. When I heard sounds coming from the living room, I subconsciously mumbled, "Is Mom here?" Ethan Gray put on his robe. "I'll go check. Don't worry, go back to sleep." Through the slightly open door, I could hear their conversation. "Has Nina woken up yet? I made soup, she should drink it while it's hot. She's tired from last night. Let her sleep a bit more." My mother-in-law then intentionally lowered her voice. "You both shouldn't work too hard. You're still young, you should really consider having a baby soon." God knows I was trying to work last night, but then I got out of bed barefoot and stood by the door, wanting to hear how Ethan Gray would handle his mom's pressure to have a baby. She's still young. No rush. He always uses me as a shield. But my mother-in-law wasn't buying it. At 22, you're not exactly young anymore. Besides, you're almost 30, having kids early means I can help take care of them. It seemed like Ethan Gray was about to give up. I felt bad for him, so I opened the door and walked out. "Mom, why didn't you let me know you were coming so I could pick you up?" As I spoke, I went over and hugged her. This old lady may act tough, but she's soft-hearted. Every time I hug her, she complains, but she's always smiling like a flower. "Oh, my Nina finally woke up. I brought you hot soup. Drink it while it's still warm." Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Ethan Gray visibly relax, his lips curling up as he watched me act cute with his mom. I drank all the soup she brought and showed her the empty bowl, eager to take credit. "Look, I drank it all." Ethan Gray looked awkwardly at the nourishing soup in front of him, frowning slightly. "Mom, please don't go through all that trouble making this soup anymore. I drank it and got a nosebleed." My research this time was thorough. I cut down on some of the herbs. It won't cause a nosebleed. Don't worry, just drink it. Ethan Gray's never been a fan of herbal soups. I grabbed his bowl before he could stop me and I tilted my head back, chugging it down, even burping the herbal taste. Actually, I kinda like, hiccup, this soup. Mom was satisfied, picking up the bowls and chopsticks. Nina's always so good. Under the table, Ethan Gray held my hand. I winked at him. "It's fine." I knew this was our little understanding. He was grateful for my save. As we left, my mother-in-law even left me some ingredients for the soup. She reminded me to drink more soup to stay healthy and to have a baby soon. I nodded, closed the door and turned around, only to feel blood dripping from my nose. Ethan Gray frowned in concern and quickly grabbed a tissue, pressing it into my nose while gently applying pressure to the sides of my nostrils. "I'll tell her not to make it again next time. It's fine. Mom's retired, she needs to feel needed. We just have to understand her more." I looked up and met his gentle gaze. He curved his lips into a smile. "You're such a goof." While Ethan Gray was off to work, I finally had time to meet up with my best friend for a meal. Maya and I met at an art exhibition, and later she married a rich second-generation heir and now lives the life of a wealthy housewife. When she found out my allowance for the month was only $5,000, she stared at me in disbelief. No way, Ethan Gray wouldn't do that, would he? But wait, aren't you being a little silly? If he gives you $200 a day, that's already $6,000 a month. Why do you need him to give you $5,000 all at once? Have you gone a little crazy painting too much? It wasn't surprising Maya thought this way, since Ethan Gray had laughed at me for the whole night over this. Seeing him so smug, I wasn't about to ruin his fun. I just graduated and haven't even started looking for a job. The money from my art publications still hasn't come through, so right now I'm pretty much broke. I reached out to a well-connected person to help invite potential clients to add me on WeChat, but I had to pay him up front. Custom artwork for clients is my strong suit, and the income is decent. As long as I have clients, I'm confident I can make it work. With him sending me $200 a day, it would take almost a month before I could start doing this work. That means I'll earn less for a few paintings. So, when I thought about it, even if I lose $1,000, I'll just consider it as paying for time. After hearing me out, Maya nodded absent-mindedly. You're really all about the money, huh? Every minute counts for you. I shrugged and kept my head down, continuing to sketch. If you don't love money, the heavens will smite you. Once I finished the custom piece for the client, I checked my watch. I have to head home and cook. Ethan Gray's been working late a lot lately, so I want to make him something nice and take it to him. Wait, you're not going to hang out with me to shop for clothes? I grabbed my bag and pinched her chubby cheek. Once I start making money, I'll take you shopping properly. Alright, take care, okay? When I got home, I spent a long time preparing the lunchbox and the stewed soup. By the time I arrived at the law firm, it was just around lunchtime and everyone was eating at their desks. Everyone's eating? I made a ton of dishes. Come on, let's eat together. Charlie saw me and immediately smiled broadly. Sis-in-law, you finally made it. I've been craving your cooking. He quickly opened the lunchbox, grabbed a big piece of beef brisket and shoved it into his mouth. So good. Ethan Gray heard the noise and came out of his office. When he saw me, a smile finally appeared on his tired face. I heard the noise and knew you were here. Wow, boss, this is some good stuff, really nourishing. I turned around when I heard the teasing voices from behind, and that's when I realized Charlie had already opened the stewed soup I made for Ethan Gray. Ethan Gray's face turned dark. Is all your work done? Or do you want to stay for overtime? Charlie immediately straightened up, desperately holding back a laugh, and cautiously handed the soup to Ethan Gray. I'm sorry, please take care of your health. Nina, come in. I followed Ethan Gray into his office. He grabbed a piece of deer whip from the soup, looking at me with a dark expression. Do you think I need this? No. I nervously shook my hands, trying to explain. My mom said this helps with fatigue. My head dropped lower and lower. And his eyes were filled with amusement. I sighed. If you don't like it, I'll throw it out. Ethan Gray raised the corner of his mouth, said nothing and downed the soup in one go. All done. Don't cry later. How did I manage to get myself into this mess again? What am I even doing? Every day when Ethan Gray gets busy, he loses track of time. Seeing him so focused on his work, I can't bear to disturb him. Thankfully, there's a small resting room in his office. I lay on the bed and before I knew it, I had fallen asleep. In my half-conscious state, I could feel the bed sinking on one side. His warm body moved closer to me, pulling me into his arms. I couldn't tell whether I was in reality or a dream. I opened the door to my house only to see blood everywhere. The strong metallic smell of blood hit me like a wave. Panicking, I rushed toward the bedroom, tripping over the carpet. As I looked up, I saw my parents lying beneath the bed, their pupils devoid of focus. No. I was jolted awake from the nightmare, my hair drenched in sweat. Another nightmare? Ethan Gray quickly pulled me into his arms, gently patting my back to calm me down. I relaxed a little, but I was still trembling in fear. I wrapped my arms around his waist, burying my face in his chest, inhaling the familiar scent on his body, feeling that safety once again. I dreamed of that day again. Ethan Gray paused, his hand continuing to soothe my back. Don't be afraid. It's all over now. Victor Hunt is dead. Hearing Victor Hunt's name still sent chills down my spine. Ethan Gray and I met because of this man. And this man was the one who dragged me into a never-ending abyss. The root of it all started with the massacre 5 years ago in N City. 5 years ago I was 17 and in my junior year of high school. Our school arranged for us to have evening study sessions. It was because of this that I managed to avoid that bloody storm. Victor Hunt broke into our house, and when my parents discovered him, he cruelly killed them. But he didn't leave. After seeing the photo I had placed on my desk, he waited for me to come home in the shadows. When I opened the door and saw the horrific scene in the house and Victor Hunt standing behind the curtains, I ran out as fast as I could, rolling and crawling. Luckily, a neighbor heard the commotion and called the police in time, saving me from disaster. However, the subsequent trial didn't go smoothly. Victor Hunt denied committing intentional murder. He looked innocent, admitting only to the theft. He claimed that when my parents found him, they attacked him and in self-defense he accidentally killed them. You're lying. My parents were devout Christians their whole lives. There's no way they would have attacked you. It was so hard. Despairing, I wandered the streets and saw a poster of Ethan Gray. In his suit, his piercing eyes stared at the camera. He was so young, already outstanding in the legal world. I had to go through many twists and turns before I finally got a chance to meet him. I didn't have much hope since his lawyer fees were high, and his cases were extremely selective. But to my surprise, he agreed immediately. In the end, we won the case. Victor Hunt was sentenced to death, and the sentence was carried out immediately. Even though I won the lawsuit, I became an orphan. That year, Ethan Gray was only 24 years old. He stood at my door, silhouetted against the light, like an angel descending to the human world. "Come home with me." I slowly stepped out from the dark corner and took the hand he reached out to me. In that moment, I felt like I wasn't completely alone in this world. I moved into Ethan Gray's home in the city center. The master bedroom had its own bathroom, so I slept there. He slept in the study and often worked late. The shock of losing my parents caused my grades to plummet from top 3 in the class to the bottom. When I brought my report card home to get my parents' signature, I found myself shrinking outside his study, too afraid to enter. I was scared to see disappointment in his eyes, and that he might no longer want me. But he didn't. He just flipped through the questions I got wrong, gently guiding me to correct them. "It's okay, just do your best. You don't need to carry any burden." Sometimes when he had time, he would tutor me. Day after day, my cold, broken heart slowly began to warm, and even more so when I saw him. It started to beat faster, more wildly. But he seemed to be deliberately keeping his distance from me. So I began to avoid him, turned down his tutoring, and retracted feelings I shouldn't have. With multiple layers of depression, I underperformed during the college entrance exam and missed the university of my dreams. But that year I turned 18. I no longer needed a guardian. But his attention to detail was so sharp. He noticed my avoidance. When I packed my things and planned to leave, he blocked me at the door. "Don't go." I lowered my head, not daring to look at him. "I've been bothering you for so long. You should have your own life." He took the luggage from my hands and put it down. "Stop saying foolish things. I'm serious." I held back tears and took the luggage, but he gripped it tightly, unwilling to let go. I stubbornly lifted my eyes to look at him, only to be stunned by a sudden, passionate kiss that made my whole body tremble. It was my first kiss, and his too. Ethan Gray pulled me out of that dark abyss in his own way. He always said, "You don't have to do anything, just be happy." Slowly, I emerged from the gloom and pain, becoming someone who loved to laugh and act cute. I even started to really depend on him, even though there were many things I could do on my own. For example, I could tear open a package with my bare hands, but as long as he was around, I could never open a bottle cap. I could dance tap in high heels, but if he was there, I would pretend to be tired and he'd carry me home. Relying on him always made him feel needed by me. "What would you do without me?" Every time he said that, his eyes were full of satisfaction and pride. I would hug him and tease, "What would you do without me?" What I did for him was to keep the house spotless, make a good pot of soup, and prepare a delicious meal. I'd wash his shirts until they were spotless and iron them until they were perfectly crisp. He never knew where his clothes were, and I would even arrange his daily underwear, making sure his life was meticulously organized. He gave in. "Looks like it's really me who can't live without you." It turns out that being needed by someone is such a happy thing. Sometimes when I look at myself in the mirror with my fair skin and healthy, rosy complexion, I can hardly remember the girl who cried in the corner of the classroom at 17. When I woke up in the morning, Ethan Gray was already up, his dark circles under his eyes were heavy. "Awake? You must be missing your parents, you were talking in your sleep." I gently caressed his cheek. Sorry, I didn't let you rest well. You're saying foolish things again. I took the day off today, I'll go with you to see them." He was always so gentle, with a meticulous sensitivity to catch my fleeting emotions. We drove to the suburban cemetery where wildflowers covered the hills. I stood in front of my parents' graves, hooking my arm through Ethan Gray's. "Mom, Dad, don't worry. Ethan Gray's been taking care of me. I'm well-fed, well-dressed, and very happy." Ethan Gray wrapped his arms around me and silently kissed the top of my head. In that moment, everything felt peaceful and safe. It was all so good. Ethan Gray dropped me off at home, and as soon as he got into the car, he received a call from the law firm. "You go ahead, don't worry about me. I'll just rest at home for a bit." Ethan Gray hesitated for a moment, but I smiled and took his hand. "Really, I can handle it. Okay, I'll take you to the entrance of the neighborhood." After waving goodbye, I turned around and almost bumped into someone. "Sorry, did I step on you?" The person shook his head, not saying anything. I started to feel uneasy, so I forced a smile and kept walking toward the neighborhood. But he didn't seem to give up, he just kept following me. The faster I walked, the quicker his steps became. Just as I was about to enter the neighborhood and call the security, he caught up with me and pressed a sharp knife against my waist. He whispered in my ear, "You know what to do." I glanced at the empty security booth, swallowed, and walked straight into the neighborhood. What do you want? Go to the underground garage, drive your car. Ethan Gray's Maybach had just been repaired and was parked all alone in the spot. The man forced me into the car, pressing the knife against my waist while sitting in the passenger seat. Who are you? If you want money, I have some cash in my bag, take it all. He narrowed his eyes, his emotions flaring up. I don't need money. I just want Ethan Gray to be my lawyer. I hit someone and I don't want to go to jail. I swallowed, trying to calm him down. You hit someone? Is it serious? I didn't kill him, just stabbed him a few times. Did he die? Of course, if he didn't die, would I be here? Hurry up and call Ethan Gray, have him save me. Otherwise, I'll make you bury the body. Brother, don't be so impulsive. I can see from your clothes that you come from a wealthy family. As long as you have money, what's there that can't be solved? Seeing he wasn't as agitated, I continued. Ethan Gray is stubborn, but he listens to me. I'll talk to him for you. Call him now. I dialed Ethan Gray's number, but it kept ringing with no answer. He was probably in a meeting. The man immediately got furious and demanded I drive out of the neighborhood. The road kept getting more deserted and I didn't know where he wanted to go, but I knew if I kept dragging this out, I'd be the one who suffered. Seeing a nighttime barbecue stand by the roadside, I swerved the steering wheel and crashed into a nearby utility pole. In that moment, I was dazed. I didn't have time to hesitate, so I unbuckled my seatbelt and ran out of the car. People nearby quickly surrounded us. I grabbed a passerby and asked them to call the police. When Ethan Gray arrived, it was the first time I saw him so frantic. I looked at him helplessly. Sorry, I crashed the car again. He rushed over and pulled me into a tight embrace, his strength making me feel like I was going to fall apart. His voice pierced my heart, each word hitting me hard. Nina, nothing is more important than your life. Later, the man was caught. He begged Ethan Gray many times, asking him to defend him and cover up his crimes. But knowing Ethan Gray's personality, how could that be possible? Ethan Gray was very self-blaming and spent the whole day with a cold expression on his face, calling the law firm to prepare the lawsuit documents. I'm going to make sure he rots in prison. I gently stroked his palm. Cheer up, I'm fine, aren't I? If anything really happened to you, I would never forgive myself for the rest of my life. Ethan Gray is the type of person who, he can bully me, but if anyone else even lays a finger on me, he'll make them pay tenfold. After the car accident, I had a few new injuries and Ethan Gray insisted on dragging me to the hospital for a checkup. When my mother-in-law arrived, she angrily punched Ethan Gray twice. I told you to be more diplomatic, but you didn't listen. You're making enemies everywhere. Don't drag Nina into this. Ethan Gray stood there in silence and I felt heartbroken for him. Mom, it's not that he's not diplomatic, he just knows the world but doesn't act worldly. I like him just the way he is. My mother-in-law chuckled and gave Ethan Gray a look. Only Nina spoils you. Of course, my husband deserves to be spoiled. In this materialistic world, to refuse huge sums of money and stick to your principles is Ethan Gray's biggest shining quality. As his wife, I naturally can't hold him back. Lately, I've been getting a lot of orders for my artwork and looking at the balance in my bank account, I've been enjoying the joy of making money. Of course, this is a card I secretly opened. It's what you call private money. But I still plan to use my first ever income to treat Ethan Gray to a nice meal. I arrived at a restaurant near the law firm and sent him a message. Lawyer Gray, do you have time for lunch today? I'll treat you, don't miss the chance. How much? Just say it. I'm not asking you for money. I received my first income today and want to treat you, just a small gesture. Oh, send me the location. I was really speechless. How else can I describe my feelings for Ethan Gray? Both love and hate. Sometimes this guy is just so sharp with his words. I sat by the window waiting for him, so bored I started to take selfies. The sound of high heels echoed, and when I looked up, a beautiful woman in a silk shirt and a tight skirt walked in. She immediately caught the attention of all the men in the room. I've always had a thing for beautiful women, so I couldn't help but watch her, smiling as she walked toward me. Wait, toward me? You must be Ethan's wife, right? I saw you in the photo album on Ethan's desk. May I ask who you are? The beauty sat down in the seat across from me, smiling as she looked at me. I'm Luna, the new intern lawyer. I'm working under Ethan. Wow, not only is she beautiful, but she's capable too. I heard that everyone who joins Ethan Gray's law firm is top-notch in the industry. Luna smiled, her red lips and white teeth so beautiful I couldn't take my eyes off her. I'm Ethan's junior. Thanks to his care, I would have been lost in this unfamiliar city without him. I couldn't help but hear the hidden meaning in her words, but out of politeness, I called the waiter over to get her a drink. You must be thirsty after talking so much. Would you like some milk tea? No, just a glass of water will do. Like Ethan, I'm not into sweet drinks. To be honest, hearing her mention Ethan Gray so much in front of me started to annoy me. I lowered my head and sent Ethan Gray a message. You have 10 minutes. If you don't show up in front of me, you'll be sleeping in the study tonight. Ethan likes this sugar-free drink. We even took a photo of it during our business trip last time. Let me show you, Luna said, holding out her phone in front of me. She flipped through it and suddenly a photo appeared of him lying in bed. Luna was smiling in front of the camera, playfully pointing at his sleeping face. Even though it was just a fleeting glance, I was sure it was Ethan Gray. She quickly took back her phone. Senior got drunk during a business trip last month and I helped him back to his room. I wasn't sure if she did it intentionally or accidentally revealed something. I felt my mind going blank, remembering that last month Ethan Gray went on a business trip. The one time he didn't call me before bed. Why are you so happy chatting? Senior. Luna's eyes sparkled when she saw Ethan Gray. Ethan Gray sat down next to me, glancing at the iced tea in front of me with a slight frown. You can't drink cold things lately, didn't you remember? I sulked and took a big sip of the iced tea. I want to drink it, so I'll drink it. Don't bother me. He stayed calm and Luna awkwardly smiled. Well, I'll leave you two alone then. Without saying much, Ethan Gray quietly took my iced tea and poured me a cup of hot water. Drink something warm. On Tuesday, the 18th of last month, when you went on the business trip, why didn't you answer my call? Ethan Gray, you better give me a reasonable explanation, or I'll make sure you never see me again. I drank too much that day. I called you the next morning to explain. That night, who were you sleeping with? Charlie. Who are you fooling? I'm actually very good at hiding my emotions. When I feel unsafe, I become particularly distant and cold. I smiled faintly. Ethan Gray, is it that the women outside are more gentle than me? Ethan Gray's expression was complicated. He looked at me like I was a little child throwing a tantrum, helpless but not intending to explain. Nina Mason. He rarely calls me by my full name unless he's really angry. Don't act like my guardian. You're no longer my guardian. I shook off his hand and grabbed my bag, heading for the door. Nina. Ethan Gray ran after me, but by the time he reached the door, I'd already slammed the accelerator and sprayed him with exhaust fumes. The figure of him in the rearview mirror grew farther away, and my phone started ringing non-stop. I glanced at the screen and saw his name. I hung up the call. I'm colder than I thought. Maybe some girls would hesitate to hang up the phone, but once I'm hurt, I close myself off and turn into a hard stone. When my phone lit up again, it was an unfamiliar number. What time is it now? Do you think that just by changing your number I'll come running back? Stop calling me. There was a pause on the other end before the voice said, Hello, I just opened a new restaurant and need someone to design wall murals. Someone recommended you to me. Well, business it is. Since the man is useless, might as well focus on making money. Alright, send me the address and I'll come take a look shortly. The car drove for quite a while, stopping in front of a restaurant on the outskirts of the city. A tall guy was standing by the side of the road wearing a white baseball cap. He must be the owner. He walked up to me and extended his right hand. Hello, I'm Elliot Hunt. I'd like to ask you to design some wall murals for my restaurant. I shook his hand and felt the width and strength of his palm, then awkwardly pulled my hand away. No problem. What kind of theme are you thinking of? I'll show you the layout of the restaurant first. Elliot pushed open the door of the restaurant and looked outside at me. I hesitated as I saw the empty restaurant, but he immediately flashed me a smile. Don't worry, I'm a gentleman. Hearing that made me feel embarrassed and I followed him inside. I looked around at the worn-out walls and the air smelled musty. Boss, if you want wall murals, you might want to repaint the walls first. As I turned to speak, I saw a fierce look in Elliot's eyes. Nina Mason, I've been waiting for this moment for a long time. When I am awake, my head was still throbbing with pain. The last thing I remembered before losing consciousness was Elliot swinging a baseball bat at me. Then everything went black. I found myself in a damp, musty room, the air thick with the scent of mold. Elliot was sitting on the chair in front of me, smiling faintly. You look even better than before. If you weren't my enemy, maybe I'd fall in love with you. I tried to struggle to my feet, but I realized I was bound tightly. I don't make enemies. You must have mistaken me for someone else. Your face. Even if you turned to ash, I'd still recognize you. Elliot took a drag from his cigarette and lit it, then pulled out my photo from his pocket. The photo was from when I was 17, the one Victor Hunt had stolen from my room back then. My breathing became uneven as I looked at Elliot and realized he shared some facial features with Victor Hunt. You're his son. Smart. Elliot gripped my chin tightly, his eyes full of hatred that almost overflowed. Back then, my father could have gotten a death sentence reprieve, but you insisted on involving Ethan Gray, not giving him any chance to live. I glared at Elliot. I gave him a chance to live, but who gave my parents one? Just then my phone rang again. Elliot looked at the screen, saw Ethan Gray's name and sneered coldly. Ethan Gray loves you so much. Do you think he'd be heartbroken if he saw your body left to rot in the wild? I trembled in fear but forced myself to stay calm. I've been long separated from him. He even cheated on me with a female colleague last month. If you kill me, you're doing him a favor. Why would he be heartbroken? Elliot tightened his grip on my chin. I've been watching him for a long time. He almost never pays attention to women except for you. Hearing Ethan Gray's loyalty confirmed by a criminal, should I be happy or sad? Happy that this man has only loved me from the start, but sad because I don't know if I'll make it out alive. Answer the phone. You know what to say and what not to say. Elliot pressed a military knife against my throat and answered the call. Nina, Ethan Gray, are you annoying? I'm very busy. Ethan Gray once told me we had a secret code only the two of us knew, used to signal each other when in danger. Are you annoying, was our code. No matter how we argued, we'd never say that to each other. There was a pause on the other end for 2 seconds before his voice became deep. Are you with a friend? The code meaning, are you being held hostage? Yes, just the two of us. The code meaning, yes, just one kidnapper. It's late. I'll come get you. The code meaning, don't be afraid, I'm calling the police. No need. My friend's father passed away and I'm just keeping him company. The code meaning, I can't escape. Elliot is here to take revenge for his father. This was our unspoken understanding. Only the two of us could decode what the other meant. Elliot grabbed the phone and hung up, then yanked at my collar fiercely. You talk too much. I believe Ethan Gray will come to save me. But Elliot is even more twisted than I imagined, worse than Victor Hunt ever was. He brought various knives, carefully wiping each one, the gleaming blades flashing in front of me. Do you know why I opened a restaurant? It's to wait for this day, to chop you up and make you into dumplings, sell you out without anyone knowing, leaving no trace. I could feel my heart pounding violently. I was terrified, but I couldn't cry. Showing fear in front of him now would only provoke more of his twisted ideas. Ethan Gray took a case once. The killer made human meat dumplings, thinking they were flawless, but the bones betrayed him. If you want to kill someone, you have to destroy the body, leave no evidence. Seeing him stop and look at me, I feigned calm and continued. I know there's a strong acid that can corrode the body, leaving no bones behind. Elliot smiled and walked towards me, eyeing me closely. Nina Mason, I've been watching you for a long time. Everyone thinks you're a naive, sweet girl, but I know you're very good at disguising yourself. You won't fool me. Elliot slapped me hard across the face. The sting was instant and blood trickled down my mouth. Even injured, you're still beautiful. No wonder Ethan Gray treasures you so much. I wonder if I carve my knife across your face, will he still want you? Try it. A familiar and cold voice came from the door. I looked up to see Ethan Gray standing there, his face grim like a savior descending from the heavens. His gaze swept over my wounds and a murderous aura instantly filled his eyes. Well, Ethan Gray, long time no see. For a moment, Elliot was stunned, then he laughed and walked toward Ethan Gray. You warned me back then that if I touched a hair on her, you'd take my life. Well, I've made my move. What are you going to do about it? Elliot smiled, looking like a rogue. The next second, Ethan Gray's fist smashed into his face. Elliot wiped the blood from his lips in shock, then swung his fist at Ethan Gray. Ethan Gray raised his long leg and kicked him in the stomach, sending Elliot crashing to the floor. It went on like this. I had never seen Ethan Gray so bloodthirsty. Elliot was on the losing side, no defense, and soon collapsed to the ground on the brink of death. Ethan Gray quickly walked toward me, untying the ropes around me. I looked at him with tears in my eyes. If you'd come any later, you wouldn't have had a wife anymore. I was stunned by my own soft, weak voice. Just a moment ago, I had been speaking to Elliot like a dark lotus. Now I had turned back into Ethan Gray's little wife. He hugged me gently, his voice trembling with emotion. I'm sorry. I hugged him, but when I looked up, I saw Elliot suddenly getting up. He grabbed a knife from the table and charged at Ethan Gray. My heart seemed to stop in that instant. I hurriedly switched positions, putting myself between Ethan Gray and the knife. If I can die for you, it's worth it. Ethan Gray looked at me in shock, then there was a loud sound from behind me. I turned around to see Elliot crashing to the floor, tangled in the rope that had bound me. He wouldn't be getting up again. It was a scene both terrifying and absurd. I felt embarrassed by my dramatic confession just now and quickly buried my face in his chest. Ethan Gray chuckled as he held me. Who was it that said they'd die for me just now? Not talking now. Ugh, don't say that. I covered his mouth in shame. How could he be so teasing? The sound of police sirens came and I knew the danger was finally over. I called the police before I came. How did you know I was here? I put a tracker on your phone. Did you forget? After I was kidnapped before, Ethan Gray had installed a tracking system on my phone. I used to dislike it, but it saved my life at the critical moment. Oh right, I need to get my phone. This phone really was my lifeline. I walked to the table, grabbed my phone and smiled at Ethan Gray standing by the door. Found it. He smiled and put his hands in his pockets, looking at me. Let's go home. Suddenly, there was a loud explosion from behind us. The smile on Ethan Gray's face faded. Before he could react, I was hit by a flying iron frame from the blast. I felt like I was in a dark space, unable to find an exit. In the distance, my parents were walking toward me, their faces still showing the same loving, gentle smiles. Dad, Mom, I miss you so much. I ran toward them, but I fell short empty-handed. Nina, you don't belong here yet. Go back. Ethan needs you. As I watched their figures grow farther and farther away, I stood there helplessly. Ethan Gray must be going crazy. I can't die yet. I thought back to the year he brought me home when I was so tormented by the death of my parents that I had no will to live. One night, I cut my wrist watching the bright red blood flow, tears falling one after another. And just like that, I slowly lost consciousness until I heard his urgent voice in my ears. In my dazed state, I saw the long strip lights on the hospital ceiling flickering, along with his anxious expression and red eyes. Nina Mason, if you die, I will never forgive you in my next life. This was the last thing I heard him say before I lost consciousness. He treasured me like a gem. How could I so easily give up? I opened my heavy eyelids, hearing the constant beeping of medical equipment. I felt my hand being tightly held. Turning my head, I saw Ethan Gray asleep with his head down at the side of my bed. I wanted to touch his thick hair, but the pain was so intense that I couldn't lift my hand. Ugh. It seemed like my movement startled him. He raised his head, looking at me with a mixture of shock and joy, but the stubble on his face made me a little scared. Nina, why haven't you shaved? You don't look as handsome. Isn't this a lighter way to start the conversation? As expected, he smiled with his lips pressed together and rubbed my palm. I've been staying by your side every day, didn't have time to shave. He called the doctor to check on me, and after confirming my body functions were normal, he sat down, visibly relieved. Looking back at what happened that day, Elliot had already planted explosives in the room. When he was on the verge of death, he pressed the switch. Fortunately, I wasn't too close to the explosion point. The flying metal frame hit me, injuring my body, but I was able to recover slowly. During my hospital stay, my mother-in-law also came by a few times and made me a nourishing soup. I really couldn't drink anymore, so I had to force Ethan Gray to help me finish it. Even though he wasn't willing, he still gulped it down under my threats and coaxing. When I'm better, buy me a handbag. Okay. The Maybach you're driving can't be used anymore. Buy me a new car. He almost spat out the soup in his mouth, but still nodded. Okay. Now's my chance to make more requests. It's not every day I get to take advantage of him. How about increasing my monthly allowance a bit? Every time Maya and I go out, she pays. I don't have money to treat her, and it's not good, right? Okay. Ethan Gray couldn't do anything about it and handed me a peeled apple. Anything else? I'll meet whatever I can. I tilted my head, thought for a moment, and decided not to exploit my dear husband too much. No, that's all. Thank you, hubby. I happily bit into the large apple, feeling so content. Suddenly, the hospital room door was pushed open and Maya walked in crying. Nina, if you don't wake up, everyone around us is going to be driven crazy by Ethan Gray. She took a bank card from her bag and handed it to me. Take this card. No need, Ethan Gray already paid for the medical fees. This is the royalty fee for your artwork. Over $1 million. If you don't want it, I'll take it. Ethan Gray, who had been resting with his eyes closed, suddenly opened his eyes and looked at me. How can I let him know I have a secret stash of money? Maya seemed to sense the subtle atmosphere between us and chuckled awkwardly. Hee, actually, I just remembered I have something to do. I'll come back to see you in a few days. As soon as Maya left and the door closed, Ethan Gray leaned forward with a half smile on his face. Over $1 million in royalties, and you tell me you don't have money to treat Maya to a meal? When did you learn to lie, kid? I rubbed my brow. Suddenly, my head hurt so much. After finally being discharged from the hospital and returning home, my mother-in-law had tidied everything up neatly. The food was warming on the stove and everything was ready. Suddenly, I felt a lump in my throat. After losing my parents, I thought I had been abandoned by the world. But I found a new life. They were the light in my life. Hey, why is this child still crying? My mother-in-law came over and pinched my cheek. Ethan Gray glanced at me and said, "She's probably just moved by your love, Grandma. This child. By the way, I've made some nourishing soup for you both. Drink it and rest early. I'll head home now. The flowers at home need watering." After she spoke, she gave Ethan Gray a meaningful glance and patted him. "Show some strength." "Mom, you." Ethan Gray looked at his mother helplessly, but she smiled and closed the door, taking the trash by the door with her. I stood there a bit dazed. Ethan Gray's eyes darkened and his voice became hoarse. "Are you tired?" "No." After answering, I quickly realized it wasn't right, so I hurriedly added, "I am tired." He smiled, took off his glasses and gently kissed the corner of my lips. "Don't worry, I won't touch you until you fully recover." That night, Ethan Gray held me as he fell asleep. He slept deeply in my arms, even letting out soft snoring sounds. This guy, after accompanying me in the hospital for so long, I wondered how long it had been since he had a peaceful night's sleep. As I watched his sleeping face, I suddenly remembered the photo in Luna's phone, and my anger flared up. I immediately woke him up. "Ethan Gray." In the moonlight, he groggily opened his eyes. "What's wrong? You still haven't explained the situation between you and Luna. How did she end up with a picture of you in bed?" I described the photo I had seen in Luna's phone. After hearing this, Ethan Gray couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Is that what this is about? And you dare say you're not jealous?" Saying this, he opened his phone and showed me Charlie's post from that day. "The boss drank too much today and we took a few more photos while at it." In the photo, Charlie and Luna took a picture with Ethan Gray while he was drunk. The one in Luna's phone had cropped out Charlie, making it look like a photo of just her and Ethan Gray. Now everything made sense. I smiled awkwardly. "Well, you can go back to sleep." "Sleep? Now you want me to sleep?" Ethan Gray flipped over, pressing his body on top of mine. He pinned both my hands above my head, trapping me tightly. You said you wouldn't." He kissed my lips. "The agreement is null and void."